Welcome to Harsh Reality Broadcast on the 17th of March 2014. The title of this presentation is called How Long Can the Dollar Remain as the Reserve Currency? Now, I've been doing this channel now for about 2.5 years, and those that are familiar with my channel are familiar with the caption that I've put on the screen. However, this caption is now going to be ditched. I'm now going to replace it with the following caption. And as you can see, Willie Coyote is now falling. I now truly believe we have gone over the edge, realisation has taken place, and we're actually falling. Okay, if we look at this caption here from the Telegraph, it says here, the UK to surpass pre-crisis levels earlier than expected, says BCC. BCC upgrades its forecasts for growth to 2.8% this year and 2.5% next year. Well, from my point of view, that is extremely optimistic. You will see later on the same newspaper is going to talk about austerity. So this is what I mean by intermittent reinforcement, and I've explained this in my previous videos, where sometimes they'll drip feed us the occasional good news against a very, very bad backdrop. It's all to do with debt, and that is it. Ingenious ways to over leverage. And those that follow my channel know that I go back to 1971 when our problems began. That's when Richard Nixon, the president of the US, took the dollar off the gold standard. It was only supposed to be temporary, and it was to help to pay for the Vietnam War. And because of irresponsible borrowing, we've now got to a situation, and this was taken today on the 17th of March, that the US national debt is $17.5 trillion. And please note that excludes unfunded liabilities. When we factor in Medicare, pension and entitlements, that figure is much, much higher. But the average person has no idea of the debt that is keeping this fairy tale alive. This caption, I think, puts it very well. Can I put my credit card payment on my credit card? And that's all we're doing as governments. What do you think quantitative easing is all about? What do you think raising the debt ceiling is all about? It's deferring reality, and that's how I see it. Here we go. This is from Bloomberg. Global debt exceeds 100 trillion as governments binge. And that's what they're doing. They're just binging on debt. They are spending as if there is no tomorrow. Well, I'm afraid tomorrow has arrived, and it is arriving with a massive bump. Now, we are a nation of celebrity worshippers. That's what we're fed through on the mainstream television. Anybody that's a celebrity, they are worshipped with our population. Well, with the majority of the population. Not everybody's the same, but a lot of the population are just celebrity worshipping. And they are celebrity worshipping, in my opinion, the wrong role models. Have a look at this. Amy Winehouse. She was tattooed, she was on drugs, she drank too much, yet she was admired by many of the younger generation. What a poor role model. And you have that with many others. Miley Cyrus is one of the latest ones that are projecting a very poor role model. But we're being dumbed down, and that is exactly what's happening. Ireland's economy in surprise contraction. Well, not from my point of view. I knew with all those cuts we were going to suffer the paradox of thrift in Ireland. The problem is huge. There is no magic bullet. Here we go. Figures show huge rise in 0 hours contracts. And it says here, the scale of the use of 0 hours contracts have been revealed after a revision on official figures showed nearly 583,000 employees, more than double the government's estimate, were forced to sign up the controversial conditions last year. There's loads of people that are on 0 hours contracts. I did an economic forecast a couple of years ago explaining that there would be more and more people on 0 hours contracts. I have a friend of mine that flies for Ryanair. He's a first officer and he works through an agency. He is not paid directly through Ryanair. So when the winter comes, he's actually laid off for a few months. The pay and conditions of service are deteriorating now. This is becoming a major problem. Here we go. This is very interesting. Swiss bank refuses to give client his physical gold. Today, Egon von Greyschleth surprised King World News when he said that a client of the Swiss bank was unable to get their gold even though they had deposited the gold in physical form out of a Swiss bank. Below is what Egon, who is a founder of Matterhorn Asset Management out of Switzerland, had to say in his interview. And he said, there will be major wealth destruction in the next few years with stock markets, bond markets and paper currencies all falling faster than anyone can imagine. I've got physical gold. I don't keep it in a bank. I actually keep it at home. Well hidden, of course. Here we go. Russia threatens to abandon the US dollar and start dumping US debt. The Obama administration and the hotheads in Congress are threatening to hit Russia with economic sanctions for moving troops into Crimea. Yes, those sanctions would sting a little bit, but what our politicians should be made aware of is that the fact Russian officials are promising to respond if economic sanctions are imposed on them. As you will read about below, one top Kremlin advisor is even suggesting that Russia could abandon the US dollar and start dumping US debt. In addition, he is also suggesting that if sanctions are imposed, that Russian companies would not repay the debts that they owe to the US banks. Needless to say, Russia could do far more damage to the United States than the United States could do to Russia. It's a serious problem. People don't realise how serious this problem is going to get. Here we go. Do you remember before the Telegraph were quite optimistic about growth? Well, what about this headline? They say we will need decades of austerity, not years. Government after government in almost every country in the world has piled up future commitments without setting aside any funds to meet them. As we head towards the 2014 budget, some commentators are worried that we will need a few years more austerity. They are wrong. We will need decades more austerity. Okay, I would just like to say that I met with a friend of mine called Steve. He's one of the characters that are in my cartoons. He is the ever optimist. He's been working in China recently. He's working on car sales. He's also a part-time flying instructor, and we met on Saturday and we had another discussion, and he's still as optimistic as ever. He says things are improving in China. Well, I've got news for him. Things aren't improving in China, and one of the reasons he had to go to China is because he could not find work in the UK. Now, he's actually 60 next year, and he says according to the rules in China he won't be able to work there anymore, so he's coming back to the UK. But what is he coming back to? He will not have a job when he comes back to the UK. Thank you very much for listening. I truly believe that we are turning a corner. Things are going to get a lot worse. Now trust me, I am not an alarmist. I'm not one of these that are going to say it's the end of the world. If you've seen my previous videos, I foresee a worsening of our standard of living and a more draconian government. I do not see a Mad Max scenario, and I don't see any nuclear war with the threat with Russia. But I do see now a new reality, and that is to say a much worse standard of living and unstable work contracts. Thank you very much for listening.